Hello everybody, and welcome to Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. We are coming to you this week from the Charlotte Coliseum, and fans, what a night we have in store for you. Johnny Weaver. Bob, this is the kind of card that defines this territory: championships on the line, rising stars getting opportunities, and some of the most dangerous men in professional wrestling all under one roof. Caudle. And Johnny, we cannot begin anywhere else but with the situation surrounding the National Wrestling Alliance World Heavyweight Championship. Last night on World Championship Wrestling, Bob Backlund retained the title against Arn Anderson. Weaver, cutting in, serious tone. But not without controversy, Bob. Not by a long shot. Caudle. That's right. Arn Anderson scored a count-out victory after interference from J.J. Dillon, and then, perhaps even more shocking, Arn Anderson left with the championship belt in his possession. Weaver. And that means right now, Bob Backlund is still the recognized world heavyweight champion, but he doesn't physically have the title. First Lex Luger walks off with the big gold belt, now Arn Anderson walks off with the 10 pounds of gold. Caudle. You talk about confusion, Johnny, the most prestigious championship in this sport is now split in two different directions, and neither belt is in the hands of the champion. Weaver. And that kind of chaos spreads fast, Bob, because tonight, we've got championships being defended all across this card. Caudle. Right here tonight, the NWA World Television Championship will be on the line as Windham defends against one of the most dangerous men in the sport, Abdullah the Butcher. Weaver. And you can bet Paul Jones will be right there in the corner, Bob. Windham's been a fighting champion, but tonight he's stepping into a completely different kind of fight. Caudle. We've also got the United States Tag Team titles on the line, Dory Funk and Dory Funk Jr. defending against the young, powerful Steiner brothers. Weaver. Bob, that's a collision right there. The Funks bring experience, toughness, and unpredictability, but the Steiners? They bring raw power and intensity like we've never seen. Caudle. And Johnny, another championship match, the Mid-Atlantic Heavyweight title, as the Warlord defends against Perez. Weaver. And I'll tell you something, Bob, if what we saw from Perez last night carries over to tonight, the Warlord is going to have his hands full. Caudle. We'll also see Arn Anderson in action against Iron Mike Sharpe. Weaver, slight edge. With J.J. Dillon lurking around, you can guarantee there's nothing straightforward about that one. Caudle. And a six-man tag team match featuring Paul Jones' Army, Conga the Barbarian, Kamala, and the Super Destroyer. Weaver. Against three men who are going to have to fight for their lives just to stay in that ring. Caudle. We'll also see the Fantastics in tag team action, and Billy Jack Haynes stepping into the ring as well. Weaver. Bob, this is one of those nights where momentum shifts. Championships can change hands. Careers can change direction. Caudle. And with everything going on in the National Wrestling Alliance right now, from Lex Luger, to Arn Anderson, to the Four Horsemen, you get the feeling that anything could happen here tonight. Weaver. And usually does. Billy Jack Haynes made his return to Mid-Atlantic competition in dominant fashion, but not without resistance from the always game Rocky King, who surprised early by taking control with a reverse arm twist and using his quickness to keep Haynes off balance in the opening moments. However, it didn't take long for Haynes to assert his strength advantage, powering back with a wrenching headlock before unleashing a series of punishing press slams that immediately established the tone of the match. Repeatedly lifting King high and driving him into the canvas while mixing in submission attempts with his devastating full Nelson, which nearly ended the contest midway through, King showed tremendous resilience, firing back with drop kicks, a sleeper, and even scoring a near fall after a headbutt, but every rally was cut short by Haynes' raw power and control, as he continually returned to heavy strikes and slams to wear King down. By the final stretch, Haynes had fully taken over, and after one last explosive press slam in the 12th minute, he secured the 3 count in convincing fashion, sending a clear message that his return is going to have immediate impact in the Mid-Atlantic ranks. The Fantastics, Bobby Fulton and Tommy Rogers versus the Moondogs, Rex and Spot. Referee, Scrappy McGowan. From the opening bell, this was a clash of styles as the Fantastics brought speed and precision while the Moondogs immediately turned things into a fight, with Moondog Rex controlling early using a punishing full Nelson before Fulton and Rogers answered with quick tags and explosive double-team offense, including sharp flying drop kicks that kept the Moondogs off balance. However, the tide shifted when Rex and Spot isolated Tommy Rogers, cutting the ring in half and wearing him down with illegal double teams, choking, and roughhouse tactics that nearly secured a victory, only for Rogers to hang on long enough to bring Fulton back in and spark a comeback, highlighted by crisp tandem offense and a perfectly executed rocket launcher in the closing minutes that nearly finished the match. From there, the contest broke down into a chaotic four-man brawl with neither team able to maintain control as the clock expired, resulting in a hard-fought 20-minute time limit draw, and as tempers boiled over after the bell, both teams continued fighting, making it clear this issue is far from over. Result, time limit draw 20 minutes. Paul Jones Army. Kamala Super Destroyer Conga the Barbarian. With number 1 Paul Jones versus the Young Stallions and Italian Stallion. Paul Roma Jim Powers Italian Stallion. Referee, Tommy Young. This one started with surprising energy from the Young Stallions as Paul Roma came out aggressive, even catching Conga the Barbarian early with a small package that nearly stole a quick fall, but that moment of momentum was short-lived as Paul Jones' Army immediately imposed their will, turning the match into a brutal, one-sided assault by isolating Roma and unleashing relentless double-team punishment. Kamala, Conga, and Super Destroyer worked in perfect, ruthless coordination, cutting the ring in half and overwhelming Roma with power offense including crushing slams, heavy strikes, and repeated stomps while Jim Powers and the Italian Stallion were kept completely out of reach, unable to make the save. Kamala nearly ended it midway through with a vicious thrust kick and pin attempt, but Roma managed to survive, only to be worn down further as Paul Jones himself became a factor at ringside, agitating and distracting just long enough to keep the advantage firmly in his Army's favor. By the 7th minute, Roma had nothing left, and after Super Destroyer planted him with a decisive stomp, the 3-count followed quickly, giving Paul Jones' Army a dominant and emphatic victory that sent a clear message to the entire Mid-Atlantic Tag Division. Result, Super Destroyer pinned Paul Roma. Match rating, 1/2. Arn Anderson entered this match looking to re-establish himself in singles competition, but from the outset it was Iron Mike Sharpe who dictated the pace, using his size and power advantage to control the early minutes with an airplane spin and a throw over the top rope that sent Anderson scrambling just to survive the count. At ringside, J.J. Dillon remained composed, but notably spent much of the match directing Baby Doll, quietly instructing her and pointing out openings, clearly positioning her as a learning presence under his guidance, while inside the ring Anderson methodically worked his way back into the contest with trademark efficiency, hip tosses, short strikes, and well-timed counters that kept him within striking distance despite Sharpe repeatedly regaining control with punishing backbreakers and body slams. The match developed into a grinding, back-and-forth battle, with Sharpe coming dangerously close to victory in the later stages after a near fall, but as the minutes wore on, the influence at ringside became increasingly apparent, with Dillon stepping closer, timing his involvement, and continuing to coach both Anderson and Baby Doll in real time. Finally, in the 19th minute, with Sharpe beginning to tire and Anderson looking for an opening, Dillon seized the moment, grabbing Sharpe and holding him in place just long enough for Anderson to capitalize with a decisive strike, allowing the Horseman to immediately drop into the cover for the 3 count. stealing a hard-fought victory through calculated interference. As the bell rang, Dillon nodded approvingly while Baby Doll looked on, absorbing every detail, signaling that this new alignment may be just as dangerous in singles competition as the Horsemen have been in every other arena. Result: Arn Anderson pinned Iron Mike Sharpe. This Mid-Atlantic television title match was as much about circumstance as it was competition, as Perez entered without a manager for the first time in weeks, no Baby Doll, no backup, leaving him to face not only the raw power of the Warlord, but the ever-present influence of Paul Jones at ringside. Perez actually opened strong, targeting the midsection with sharp elbow strikes and working a technical game that briefly neutralized the champion's size advantage, but the tide turned almost immediately when Jones inserted himself with a cheap shot that shifted momentum and allowed Warlord to begin a sustained assault built around punishing slams and brute force offense. From there, the match became a constant uphill battle for Perez, who repeatedly mounted comebacks, stringing together headlocks, backbreakers, and even a blatant low blow to try and level the playing field. But every time he gained control, Jones was there to disrupt, whether it was tripping him, distracting the referee, or even slipping an object into play that nearly turned the match in the challenger's favor. Despite the odds, Perez pushed the champion to the limit, scoring multiple near falls and keeping Warlord off balance deep into the match. But the numbers game ultimately proved too much, and in the final moments, after yet another momentum shift created by Jones' presence, Warlord crushed Perez with a decisive leg drop to secure the 3 count and retain the championship in controversial fashion. Result: Warlord pinned Perez. Steiner brothers came into this opportunity riding momentum and looking to prove they belonged among the elite, and early on they did just that, matching the Funk brothers hold for hold and even gaining brief control with their signature amateur-based offense, as Rick and Scott used quick tags, suplexes, and arm work to keep the champions honest. But what quickly became apparent as the match progressed was the difference in experience, as Terry Funk began disrupting the rhythm with timed small packages and veteran instincts, while Dory Funk Jr. methodically slowed the pace and began targeting the legs, gradually pulling the Steiners into deeper waters than they had been in before. The middle portion of the match saw flashes of brilliance from the challengers, including crisp double-team sequences and explosive offense, but each time they surged, the Funks answered not with flash, but with precision, control, and an understanding of how to win under pressure. By the later stages, that gap in ring IQ became decisive, as Dory locked in a grinding sequence of holds, including a perfectly applied spinning toe hold, using the ropes for just a touch of added leverage out of the referee's sight to trap Scott Steiner and force the final breakdown, leading directly to the 3 count. It was not a dominant squash, nor was it a controversial robbery, but rather a clear lesson, one where the Steiners proved they could compete, but the Funks proved why they are champions, leaving the challengers disappointed but far from finished, with the sense that this setback may only be the beginning of their climb. Result: Dory Funk Jr. pins Scott Steiner. There was tension before the bell even rang, as the controversial assignment of slow count Sam Diamond drew skepticism for a match of this magnitude, and once the action began, those concerns proved justified almost immediately, as Abdullah the Butcher stormed Windham with brutal offense, heavy elbow drops, turnbuckle smashes, and clubbing blows, while Windham countered with speed and precision, using aerial hip tosses and sharp reversals to keep himself alive in the early going. However, the match quickly became chaotic due to constant interference from Paul Jones, who repeatedly inserted himself with cheap shots and attempted foreign object usage, while Conga and Super Destroyer loomed nearby, only held in check by the towering presence of Andre the Giant, who stepped forward at key moments to prevent a full-scale numbers advantage from overwhelming the champion. As the pace intensified, both men began to break down physically, with Abdullah busting Windham open following a brutal foreign object shot and repeated headbutts, only for Windham to fire back with desperation offense, including a twisting reverse and a flying dropkick that stunned the challenger and ignited the crowd. By the 12th minute, the match had completely unraveled, with Jones once again attempting to pass Abdullah a weapon while Andre moved in to block the interference, causing a confrontation at ringside that drew the attention of Sam Diamond, and in the confusion, Abdullah blatantly struck Windham with the foreign object while Windham simultaneously retaliated with a running bulldog using the same weapon, leaving both men down as the referee finally turned around and saw the aftermath, with both competitors clearly having used illegal tactics and the ringside situation spiraling out of control. Sam Diamond had no choice but to call for the bell, ruling the match a double disqualification at 1300 hours, as both Windham and Abdullah lay bloodied in the ring while their respective sides nearly erupted into a full confrontation before officials intervened. Result: double disqualification.